Is there such thing as a good enough job?
They say do what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Is that actually true?
What am I supposed to do when my company is telling me that we're your family?
In this episode, we're bringing in a guest who's going to tell you you don't have to have the dream job.
That working to live is actually okay.
Demoted.
Can we talk about something? And that is some people who are so hot it's offensive.
Yes.
Like, you have absolutely no right to be that hot around me.
Yeah.
And now I'm mad.
I was at the Guardsman Tree Lot, which is run by, if you don't know that, in San Francisco, by like 50 attractive men.
By the way, most of them were in tech sales.
In their 20s and 30s.
And they're all over 6 feet tall. That's why I couldn't.
They're all over 6 feet tall, so hot. And I'm filming a video dressed as a dad.
They're like, you want me to grab that tree for you? And they grab it with one arm and lumberjack that shit out.
There's one guy
front.
who was literally shirtless. I'm like, why? It's a freezing warehouse. Why is your
He's
shirt
just like
off?
wearing gloves only. He's just huffing and puffing.
It was just gloves. It was so lumberjack hot. I was like, oh my God. Annie and I both could not look at him because he was too much.
Excuse me, can you guys please get the hot guy out of here? We're trying to shoot a video.
Could we? I can't even focus. I can't get into character because he's so distractingly hot.
Anyway, I feel that way about Becca sometimes. Welcome to Demoted, Moterheads.
Welcome
We
back.
have a treat for you.
We are not talking about physical attractiveness today,
And how egregious it can be at times.
but we do have a pretty awesome guest coming into the studio.
One of the things we've talked about in our previous episode was our New Year's resolution that we're going to start bringing in guests and people of value. Because, you know, we know you learn a lot from us. Like, God, we're your mentors. We're your work besties. We spoon feed you stats. Here comes the train. Choo, choo, choo. You're going to get some of that today.
But better.
He's not between us right now.
He's not between us right now. He's coming into the studio. We have been studying this man for weeks in anticipation of him coming on this podcast. He's written the book, The Good Enough Job.
He essentially explores the idea that work doesn't have to be your entire identity, that you can have a good enough job to sort of do the things in life that you want to do. He sort of explores decoupling this idea that our self-worth is tied to our professional performance. And given that you Motorheads, many of you have experienced things like burnout or wondering if you're going the right direction in life, things like that. Our guest brings in the social science behind a lot of this stuff. He's not here to prescribe you one way is better than another, but sort of a way to reframe and think about your own relationship with work.
He's an author, designer, and workplace expert from San Francisco. So we're having him live in the studio with us. We are thrilled.
He's been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, and many other publications. His current book, as we mentioned, is The Good Enough Job, which leverages deep journalism and social science to uncover and expose the lies we, as well as our employers, tell ourselves about the value of our labor.
So joining us today is Simone Stolzoff.
Simone, welcome to Demoted. You are our second guest. We are very stoked to have you. Now, your last name is Stolzoff.
Indeed.
And your full name is Simone. How many people do you have to tell it's
Every
Simone?
substitute teacher I've ever had and most new friends.
Yep.
So it's not Simone, everyone. And you go by Simo. Times. Simo.
For the good friends. You guys can be a Simo.
We can
Motorheads,
be,
you can call him
okay,
Simo.
Good.
You can call him Simo.
We're on that
welcome
level.
to the show.
Welcome. Us two idiots have been talking out of our asses for like almost a year now, so we're ready to have like a real thought leader expert in the chair.
Yeah, I mean, after 100 pence, it's big shoes to fill, quite literally.
No.
Yeah, well.
It's about time. It's about time we get some real brain power in here in the room.
Exactly. And so, like, we're going to kick it off with a few questions here. We got a bunch of inquiries from the Motorheads as well. We'll go through some of those. But I guess I want to start with, how did you get to this point? You were a design lead at IDEO, and now you're a journalist, you're an author, part-time poet, full-time poet?
Let's keep it part-time for now.
Keep it part-time poet.
Yeah.
What got you to this point? I mean, that's a pretty big pivot and kind of led you down this path.
Totally. I mean, the question of what got me to this point is actually the same question of what got me to the book, which is, I think I spent my entire 20s playing Goldilocks with different careers. I worked in tech, I worked in advertising, I worked in design, I worked in journalism, and all the while I was trying to find that perfect dream job.
Right.
You know, we were sold this message, especially our generation, millennials, that if you find your dream job, that's the only way to do good work that matters. That's the only way to live a fulfilling life.
Yep.
And so I searched really hard. I played Goldilocks with these different careers. I had this sort of drunkard's walk through these different industries. And it all came to a head at this one point when I was about 28 or so. I was working as a journalist. I was working for The Atlantic at the time. And this design firm, IDEO, which you mentioned, reached out about a job. And I was very flattered. It was the first time a recruiter had ever reached out to me. Always take the call.
Yep.
And so I could passively go through this interview process. And then I find myself at this fork in the road. And on one path, there's sort of Simone, the journalist. And on the other path, there's Simone, the designer. And, on one hand, it's like, woe is me, the agony of having to decide between
First
two attractive job
wow.
offers, But on the other hand, it didn't feel like I was choosing between two jobs. It felt like I was choosing between two versions of myself.
Sure.
And, maybe some of the listeners have been through similar situations where you're just kind of standing at this fork in the road. And the TLDR is that I was insufferable. I couldn't make up my mind about which job I wanted to choose.
We know something about being insufferable.
For the life of me. Yeah, I was talking to my Uber driver and my yoga teacher. I was like, so which job do you think I should take?
What would you do?
And what I realized is that my identity and my job had become so entwined. They become so yoked together. And I knew that I wasn't the only one. So I ended up taking the job at the design firm, but as a way to keep my writing muscles from atrophying, I decided to embark on this research project of how did work become so central to our lives and what sort of the cost of treating work as our primary means of self-actualization.
So that was a parallel piece. While you took the job.
I took the job.
You took the job and you maintained, and I think that's an important thing, is you continue to maintain that other piece of yourself.
Yeah,
which led to this.
A writing practice, a way to keep writing, even though my day job as a designer wasn't sort of doing the long form editorial journalism that I had spent the last few years building.
We talk about the side hustle a lot. It was sort of maybe your side passion, we'll call it at that time.
And there's also a great irony. I wrote this book about, right-sizing work's place in our life on the side of a full-time job.
Yes.
And I think that's where sort of the nuance of the book comes in. It's like, we live in a society that loves to either lionize or villainize work and say work sucks, I'm anti-work, I'm going to join a Reddit thread, or work is the only means to do good work. I'm like a Steve Jobs stan and I'm going to, search for that dream job. And if I haven't found it, there's something morally wrong with me. And I think the book is my attempt to find a middle path.
Sure.
I love that. And so that was your kind of story and how it brought you to start this research. We joke that the Moterheads is what we call our listeners, that the Moterheads love stats. Can you set the stage for us on the research you started off with in this book? You weren't alone in this, obviously. Yeah. And can you tell the listeners kind of what you found out?
Totally. Okay, stats.
It can be generalized.
It can be general
findings.
findings.
I'll name two stats I think are pretty illustrative of sort of the broader trend of the book.
Sure.
The first is that at the end of the 1970s, the average American and the average German worked the exact same number of hours each year. And now the average American works 30% more than the average German. And that holds true with a lot of our peer nations. Even the Japanese, who are historically overworked, Americans work more than the Japanese on average.
Wow.
So that's one question. It's like, how did we get here? How did work become so central to our time, so central to our lives? Because the general trend is that the wealthier a country gets and the wealthier individuals get, they work less historically because, frankly, you can afford not to. Right?
Yep.
If you don't have to work all the time, historically, people have chosen not to. And yet some of the greatest increases in work time can be found among the listeners to this podcast, white-collar, college-educated knowledge workers. So that's one stat. Another stat that I'll bring up is that in the 1950s, over 9 out of every 10 Americans was affiliated with a religion of some sort. And now, almost 3 out of every 10 Americans doesn't have any sort of religious identity at all. And so with the decline of these other sources of meaning and identity in our lives, like religion, but also other forms of community and neighborhood groups, there's this need for belonging and meaning and purpose and identity. And for a lot of people, they turn to where they spend the majority of their time, which is the office. And so that's sort of the question of the book. It's how did work come to be this outsized role in not only our lives, but our sense of community, our sense of purpose, and our sense of who we are.
Yeah, that's super interesting, just historically. And I do feel like so many of our listeners are just like, I live to work. It's all I have. I'm in the office sometimes Saturday, Sundays, these investment banking jobs. It's like, how am I supposed to break out of this?
I mean, the capitalist MBAs are like, and that's why all the biggest companies come from America, because we work our asses off. I mean, look at Germany. We got BMW.
Totally.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, they're not wrong, right?
I know,
I think that's
wrong.
the balance that you have to strike. Like
right.
A lot of innovation has come out of the United States. I think part of it is this culture of individualism, this sort of American dream ethos that anyone can start the next, unicorn startup or whatever. But I think there's also a lot of costs, and we've seen some of them recently. One is that your job might not always be there, So many people I talked to for the book, were working their way up some corporate ladder. And, I spent 15 years working at Google, and then they laid me off in an impersonal email from HR. So that's one question. If you are what you do and you lose your job, who are you? The second is about just expectations. It's like, how high do we set the bar for what work can deliver? There's a line in the book that our desks were never made to be our altars. And so if you're always looking to work to be perfect, to be a dream, it can create a lot of room for disappointment when you're faced with the inevitable monotony or tedium that exists in any line of work. And I think the third, which is really why I am most interested in the book, is that if we are only investing in one facet of who we are, our work self, then all these other parts of who we are can wither. Certainly we're all more than just workers. We are friends and family members and, amateur adult league baseball players.
Stars.
And if we don't invest in these other aspects of who we are, then it's a lot of pressure to put on just our work. It's it's like balancing on a really narrow platform that's susceptible to be blown over by a gust of wind.
I used to make a joke, like on a Hinge date, the worst question anyone could possibly ask is, what are your hobbies?
Yeah.
What do you mean, what are my hobbies? I don't do anything
She
besides
works.
this.
Closing deals.
I work, I close deals, I film myself I'm exhausted. I watch TV. It's so funny.
Time for hobbies. That's
but
cute.
It's true. It's true. It's sad. So
you said a ton of stuff in there. And I think I want to just zero in for 1 second just on layoffs. And they never feel good. It does feel often like a part of your identity is being ripped away.
Yeah.
Is there a healthier way to frame it? I know a lot of folks, especially from the sales world in tech. I mean, it's been a bloodbath the last 3 years, 4, 5 years now. Is there a better way to look at it? Is there some sort of thing, something you can tell yourself or a reframe that can make it better? It's never going to be all better. Of course, we, like money so we can afford food, not die.
Totally. I think the thing that layoffs do is they lay bare the relationship between employees and employers, which is to say it's a transaction. It's a contract where employees give their time and their labor, and in return, they get a paycheck. And if an employer or a corporation ever feels like they want to cut costs, their fidelity to their bottom line is always going to trump their faithfulness to their people. And so having gone through a layoff myself, and I'm sure other people that are listening to this pod have as well, you just see that it's a transaction, and it might be framed as something else. This is a vocation, this is a family, this is a calling, we're here for this mission. But, when the layoff comes, it shows that maybe this relationship is a little bit more transactional than I thought, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think that can open our eyes to, as employees, for one, be able to talk about money and not think that it's this like taboo topic and you're somehow undermining the company's best interest if you're trying to advocate for what you deserve. I think the second thing is it allows us to see work as part of, but not the entirety of who we are. Especially here in the Bay Area, there's so many people that refer to themselves as, I'm a Googler, I'm a member of the Air fam, and then they get laid off and it's like, who are you?
Then they go to LinkedIn, they go ex-Googler.
Exactly.
But immediately update the LinkedIn.
There's a big difference between just conceiving of yourself as I am someone who works at Google versus I am a Googler.
Right. So as two people who have made their entire work their identities, are we the problem? Have we gone too far?
Are we the problem?
I would ask that to yourselves. Do you think you're the problem?
Whoa, don't put this back on us.
I think this is what I'll say. I don't think there's anything wrong with aligning your interests or your passions with what you do for work. So as long as there's other things in your life that you care about too. So
Natalie, take note. Yeah. Other things that you care about.
Like what?
Like friendships.
There's nothing.
Like your family. Like your boyfriend, perhaps. Of course. And I think
she's picking him up from the airport today. She's all in.
Guys, someone loves me. I promise. No.
and it's no longer your corporate overlord.
Yes.
I'll promise you that much. And I just think as long as you can diversify the sources of meaning and identity in your life, it's fine. Work is one thing worth investing in. It's a source of community. It's a source of purpose. It's a source of meaning, but it is not the sole source of meaning and identity and purpose in your life. And I think the quicker we realize that, the healthier relationship to work we will have.
And what would you say to someone, I want to go back to the dream job that you mentioned in your first you were aspiring to find this, someone who, I have a lot of friends and listeners of this podcast where I don't know how to even do the work to find out what excites me. I've been in this Deloitte consulting role for 6 years now. And should I just stay here forever? It pays the bills. I'm kind of miserable. I don't know. What's the balance between stay, do that, and find this dream job that maybe doesn't exist?
Totally. I think the first thing to recognize is that you don't have to have a dream job. I remember I was a poetry student. Actually, I was a poetry and economics student. So you can already see this like existential crisis on the horizon. One more layer. I was a poetry and economics student at Penn, which is like the most pre-professional school we have in the US. And my senior year, I had the chance to interview my favorite writer in the entire world. He's this poet. His name is Anis Mojgani. And so I asked him, Anis, how do you feel about the mantra, do what you love and never work a day in your life? And he said something that I'll never forget. I was expecting him to give me this pep talk and be like, follow your passion, kid, and the money will follow. And he didn't. He said, Simone, I think some people do what they love for work, and others do what they have to so they can do what they love when they're not working, and neither is more noble. And I think that last part is key. We live in a society that loves to revere the people whose jobs and identities neatly align, the podcasters, the astronauts, the social entrepreneurs, what have you. And here's the professional poet telling me that like it's okay to have a day job, buddy. So I think to your friend, like that would be the first thing I'd say is like it's okay to not have a dream job and to understand what your job affords you outside of work. Maybe it allows you to, spend time with the people that you love, or live in a place that you love to live in, or go on those vacations. Right?
The work to live, not the live.
Yeah, support people that you care about. If you really do want to find that dream job, I'd pay attention to what you're doing in sort of the cracks of your day. What are the articles that you're reading about? What are the things that might seem like work to other people that actually bring you a lot of pleasure and help you find a sense of flow? There's this guy, Daniel Pink, and he has this model about what leads to intrinsic motivation. And there's 3 components. There's autonomy, so feeling like you have control, like you're in the driver's seat of your own life. There's mastery, like do you feel like you're getting better at the things that you want to be getting better at? And the third is purpose. Like, do you feel like you're having impact in the way that you want to? So I'd be thinking about those sort of questions, and that's a good way to sort of evaluate how happy you actually might be in your job or not. And maybe the truth is that you do have to look for a new opportunity, or you do have to move on, or you do have to take a leap without knowing exactly where you're going to go, just to learn a little bit more about yourself.
I would say a personal anecdote there, and like I say something very similar because people ask me about the passion and so forth. And to me, it's like, what do I do in my subconscious, like when I'm bored?
Yeah.
I found myself writing. I found myself making home videos. But at no point growing up was I ever told, like, go to film school, like be a creative. I was like, nah, I'm going to go be successful in business. I don't even know what that meant.
Totally.
But when I go look back at all the signs that were there, it's like, oh, you liked making home videos when your family came to town. Oh, you liked writing short stories and reading them to your family because you wanted them to laugh at some shit. And I was like, those are the things that if I had just been attuned to early on, I would have found my way here quicker. But still, somewhere my subconscious is steering me towards the things that I want to be doing.
Totally. And that's also a great question to figure out what your hobbies are. What are the things that you like to do as a kid?
Right.
You like to play baseball, you like to paint, you like to watercolor, you like to go on hikes, you like to do something. Those are indications of what you like to do, not as a means to another end, but as an end in and of itself.
What do you think about the idea that passion is cultivated and not inherently inside you? That if I play the drums one day, holy shit, drums is now easy to me. The mastery piece, like that comes over time, and passion often in my mind comes over development of that mastery.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think passion isn't necessarily a precursor to finding work that you love. I think it's often the result of doing hard work. There's this great book by this guy named Cal Newport called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And his whole argument is like, stop looking for your passion, start looking for something that you can get good at. Start looking for some career capital, he calls it. And then once you are good, then the passion follows because it feels good to be good at something. I think that's probably true with any creative pursuit in particular. This gap between our expectations of the type of creative work that we want to do and the type of creative work that we're actually pursuing. And as you get closer and closer, that's where the passion is cultivated.
Right.
I like that. I think passion is so overused in art. Like I remember writing my college essay on what I'm passionate about. Like I'm 17 years old. I have no idea what I'm about. I don't even know what gets me out of bed in the morning. I think it's my mom, honestly. Like I don't know.
I love alarm clocks.
Forcing me to go to school. Like I just do think everyone feels so much pressure to love everything they do and be so passionate and have this dream job. So it's refreshing to hear that. Okay, so a question for you personally with your journey. We heard your story of how you got here to writing this book. How has your sense of self changed from writing this and doing all your research? And I know you have a book coming out soon.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the whole cliche in like the author world is that you write the book that you need to read,
Yeah.
So for me, like this whole book writing process was an effort for me to figure out what role I wanted work to have in my life. And one big change happened, which is about 6 months before the book came out, I quit my corporate job and started working for myself. And I thought that was going to be like the big reckoning that led to rainbows and bunnies and freedom for the rest of my days. And in actuality, I found that I was the worst boss that I'd ever had. You know, it wasn't like some manager, some like culture of a company that was pushing me to work all the time. It was like my internalized sense of like hustle culture, and I'm only good on the days where I cross off a sufficient number of things on my to-do list, you know, and like in Taylor Swift's verbiage, like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem,
Yes.
you know? And I think realizing that was a really important sort of insight into my own relationship to work moving forward, which is that like no one is going to come and like gift me boundaries. No one is going to come and say like it's important for you to like spend time with your best friends as opposed to just like riding in a cave.
Yeah.
No one is going to come tell you that like this is the amount of money that is sufficient to support the lifestyle that you want to live. You have to make those decisions for yourself. And you know, I think it applies to people in the corporate world too. It's like unless you define what relationship to work you want to have, your employer will happily do it for you. You know, it's hard to like push back against these greater macroeconomic forces. And so it's incumbent on each of us to take a stand. You know, the title of the book is The Good Enough Job. You know, it's not sort of like a resignation that you just like do a good enough job. It's like a good enough job is a definition that you get to define. Like maybe for one person, it's a job that has a certain title or is in a certain industry or gets paid a certain amount of money. Maybe for someone else, it's a job that lets them off at a certain hour so they can take that bike ride that is really the primary source of meaning and passion in their life, or pick up their kids from elementary school. But regardless of what your definition of good enough is, I hope people recognize when they find it, because then they can start investing in aspects of themselves beyond producing economic value.
I love that. I have one question. I think because Ross and I both, when we became full-time content creators, we carried this like shame of like, we're going to tell people in San Francisco that we're content creators. Like that's just not, that sounds silly. It sounds
It's like telling people you're a DJ, but you
Yeah,
just have an aux cord. You know?
Totally. And I guess just for the good enough job, like I think we've had to come to terms with, we're so proud of what we do. We're so lucky to do this. We feel like we're creating great work and value in society. And how to someone who's maybe struggling with like, God, I'm just an entry-level analyst, or maybe that they're hung up on that title. They don't know if it's the pressure from society telling them, or if it's like, they don't know how to make it actually just about them.
Yeah.
What would you tell that person like to get that confidence?
Yeah, totally. I mean, to a certain extent, like you gotta have to pay your dues, you know, like especially even in a creative field, like being a content creator, being a podcaster, you know, you're not going to start off on day one with 100,000 followers. And so I think, you know, step one is trying to get clear on what turns you on, like what aspects of your job actually
Excite you.
Don't look at my research.
Yeah, bring you alive. We've known each other for a long time, so like the sad glance is like well warranted at this point. But you know, like, okay, maybe you don't love your job title right now, but is there a way that you can turn the job that you have more into the job that you want? Are there aspects of your job that you feel really called to or you feel really good at? Are there people at your company that can maybe mentor you that have jobs that are more similar to the types of jobs that you want to be doing? There's just one study that I quote in the book, and these researchers went into a hospital and interviewed a bunch of janitors, not who you'd think would be like the most sort of meaning forward jobs in the world. And they found that the janitors roughly broke into two categories. They all had the exact same job title and responsibilities. And some people felt that their job was relatively low skill. They didn't really go out of their way to interact with their colleagues or the people that they were serving. And ultimately, they were pretty unfulfilled by their work. And the second group, they thought their job was a little bit higher skill. They did a lot of like interaction with like the patients in the hospital and their colleagues that they were working alongside. But the biggest difference was people in this second group felt that they were part of this system of healers, of this healthcare system where their job was to aid in healing the sick. And just by that like mental framing, what the researchers called job crafting, they were able to get a lot more pleasure and fulfillment out of their roles. And so, you know, that's one thing I'd say to this entry-level analyst is like thinking about what is the impact that your job is having. Not maybe you work in finance and it's just like more money, you know, up and to the right, but like the impact you're having on your colleagues, and can you make someone else's job easier? And can you think about what is sort of the reason why you are working beyond just making money? That can help you have a better relationship and a better sort of mentality when it comes to why you are doing what you do.
I like that. And what's that, like, incentive alignment? Okay. Yeah. So we're going to shift into kind of questions from listeners. We told our listeners that you were coming on. They are thrilled and excited. Here are some questions. So the first one's around burnout. We've discussed how this is potentially an overused term now. It's we're struggling to identify, is this burnout or am I miserable? What is this? Yeah. This question is, I'm currently burnt out. When is the time to make a career change or just lean into less work?
Yeah. I think, as you mentioned, burnout is sort of an overused term at this point. The research shows that there's actually 3 different types of burnout. The first is called overextension burnout, which is what you might imagine, having too many things on your plate, doing too much.
Very real thing, by the way. We're not saying burnout isn't real.
Yeah. Yes. The second is what's called depletion burnout, which basically means that you aren't resting, you aren't recovering from the work that you're doing. And the third is called misalignment burnout, where there's a discrepancy between what you value and maybe what you're spending your time doing. So I think the first step is acknowledging what type of burnout you have. For some people, they can work 12-hour days on something they're really passionate about and not feel burnt out. And some people, they're just working from 10 to 3 and doing the minimum, but feel incredibly burnt out. It's trying to identify kind of what kind of burnout you have. And each of them has different interventions. So for overextension burnout, it might mean, doing less, setting better boundaries, saying no, exactly. For depletion burnout, I'd recommend sort of active forms of rest. So things that you do outside of work that aren't just to turn off your brain and turn on Netflix or whatever, but to actually find a sense of aliveness outside of work. So building relationships, finding hobbies, doing things that give you a sense of energy outside of
toxic
work.
relationship with golf.
Yeah, exactly. Just
you get
obsessed with your backswing. I play Frisbee.
Yeah.
I wasn't really going to out myself, but thanks for doing that.
I heard that on other podcasts.
Well, we're the people in the quad with the Frisbee.
Yeah, exactly.
We know.
Thank God the cure to my burnout is 175 grams of plastic. And then the last element of it is just misalignment burnout. And if that's the case, then you might need to make a change. You might need to find a job or a role that's more aligned with what it is that you actually value. So I think asking yourself those questions is a good first step for our listener to figure out what type of burnout they actually have, and does this mean that I have to blow up my life and go backpack around Southeast Asia, or can I just make some subtle changes and have a better relationship to work?
I like that a lot. Ross, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you. So I'm talking with Annie about how I want our incentives to align. Annie's my employee. We work together, and how it means more to me that we both want to make the brand deal and go the extra mile and whatever. That would make us both feel fulfilled and less stressed. Yeah. For you as sales, do you think salespeople are more fulfilled because they are aligned to make more money, and that's aligned with the company mission as well? And sometimes with these uncapped commissions, it's they're so fired up because they're aligned.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they talk about in business school. It's you want to change behavior, incentivize it.
Yeah.
Period. You want salespeople to sell this product? Well, comp them 5x more if they sell it.
Yes.
Salespeople are often more extrinsically motivated. They want the prestige. They want the money. They want to be top of the leaderboard.
Which isn't bad.
It's not a bad thing.
They know that, right? Yeah.
We talk about this. You can be money motivation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You can absolutely be that. But I do think there is often a cost when you're not succeeding in those things. That's often greater. And I would say goes back to Simone's point of be more well-rounded. A lot of salespeople, their entire worth is centered around the number.
Hitting quota.
Hitting quota.
Yep.
If they're doing it, king, queen of the world, can't touch me. If it's bad, it's bad.
I'm miserable.
It's miserable. But, if there's a comp plan that can be broken, a salesperson's going to figure out how to do it, how to game the system and make as much money as they can. Because that's how it goes. That's what you're trying.
Yeah.
We're just dogs.
Totally.
We're just dogs.
I love it.
It's sales dogs. That's
we have
what
a lot
are.
of sales motorheads who just wanted to.
So I have a question here, and I'm so the question was written is, what's your opinion on the companies that say, we're a family? And I want to go one step further than that and say, is it a possibility that some of these leaders, CEOs, they're going through it right now. I do believe some of them want to believe that their employees are family. That they don't want to lay people off.
Totally.
I'm also not trying to sit here and be a corporate bootlicker, so to speak, though that term has been thrown around awfully loosely towards us. But that thought on family, is it some of these folks who are similarly exhibiting cognitive dissonance to say these are my family members, but hey, here comes the board.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more complicated to me than just being they're just saying it to kind of fuck with you.
Totally. I don't think there's a bunch of mustached men in the dark room that are how can we take advantage of
family.
employees? We don't have to pay them more. We just call them our family, Yeah. But, as we started, a work relationship is an economic relationship.
Right.
And I do think that there are, benevolent leaders out there who really see their team members as, really close relationships that they care about. They care about their well-being. And, I don't think family is a metaphor that we should aspire to. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't know many functional families. I don't think that's the thing that we should be going for everyone. Two, like, you don't lay off your family members when you come on to economic headwinds. I think the metaphor really breaks down when, we're not in a zero interest rate economy, or, the sales supply chain is fucked up. You can't necessarily be like, oh, well, my family, I'll just, float them some money for a little while until their business recovers. And so I like the metaphor of like a team a lot better.
Sure.
Just like working together towards a shared goal, a shared mission, everyone playing their part. But, the reality is that companies, hire employees when they add value and let employees go when they don't.
Yep.
And we should be clear-eyed about that.
So here's how you should reply when your company says, we're a family. If this company is my family, I'm gonna need to borrow some money.
If this company is my family, we have a serious incest problem.
Are we like the family from the Brady Bunch or Succession?
If we are indeed a family, I'm going to need to see the DNA results. You are not the manager! Yes.
Ross
I knew it.
Ross was waiting so long, all day, to deliver that line. So I'm glad you could do it.
You are not the manager.
Yeah.
I knew it.
I have the results right here. You are not the manager. If we're a family, why doesn't the break room have homemade cookies like grandma's?
If this company is a family, why can't I crash on the couch when I'm having roommate problems?
So a lot of this with the Good Enough Job, to me, just from an outsider, when I first kind of was reading about it, was like, okay, well, how do I make money, right? Like sometimes money leads to freedom and all these things. So like, how do you balance soul versus salary when the work you wish you could do doesn't pay the bills?
Yeah. I mean,
Poetry.
Poetry. Very lucrative career path.
Yes.
I think, it starts with understanding what role a job has in your life at this particular moment in your life. I think when you have few responsibilities and you're starting off, if you don't have debt, it might make sense to do some exploration. I think especially in your early 20s, it's a great time to, live with roommates and live maybe more frugally if you want to pursue that creative path, because you don't have a mortgage and dependents and kids necessarily. But over time, understanding that work can provide friendships, work can provide purpose, work can provide meaning and community and a sense of something greater than yourself. But the thing that it has to provide is enough money to support the life that you want to live. And so rather than starting with like the job as a central axis around which the rest of your life orbits, I'd actually start with your vision of a life well lived. And think about, where do you want to live? What kind of standard of living do you want? If you want to live in the Bay Area, for example, you're going to have to make enough money to afford rent in the Bay Area. You can't live under the delusion that we don't live in a material world. But if you want to make a choice to, say, move to Fresno, for example, as a California city that has a little bit of a lower cost of living, then you can maybe make career decisions that don't prioritize money as the number one thing in your life. There's this concept I write about in the book called vocational awe. And it's this idea that in certain creative and mission-driven fields, like writing or podcasting, but also nonprofits or healthcare, education, there can be this sort of halo effect of just working in the industry itself. Like, oh my God, like you're a podcaster. You're so lucky to be able to do that work. And that halo effect can actually cover up a lot of the injustice that exists in these industries. I definitely saw that in journalism when they'd say like, there's a line of people at the door that will happily take your job, and so we don't have to pay you a living wage. And so understanding that, some people pursue their passion or pursue their means of making an impact in the world through their 9 to 5. And some people, work their B2B software job and also live an incredibly philanthropic or rich or community-filled life outside of what they do to make money.
So what's your stance on the mantra, work hard, play hard?
If that's your vibe, write it.
If you're trying to play, you play.
Work hard, play hard. Yeah, I think like, maybe we can expand our definition of play beyond like binge drinking at a Holiday Inn Express
I was going to
bar.
say, well, how do you define play hard?
Yeah.
For you?
Espresso martinis.
I'm not a huge drinker, but I definitely like spend a lot of time with my family and my friends. And I think, that's as good of a reason to work hard as any. I'm in an interesting position right now because my wife and I are about to have our first kid.
Oh,
and that's like really changing my conception of work's role in my life. Sure, for the 15 years of my career, I thought about like myself first and foremost. And it was just like this like hedonistic, like how can I find the job that gives me the most pleasure, you know? And now I'm in a phase where it's like, how can I find a way to make money that provides stability for the people that I care about? And that's like my version of playing hard, you know? Like I want to work hard, yes, because like I care about writing and I want to write great books, but I also want to work hard so that at like 4 o'clock I can like go pick up my kid from daycare and not be some like absentee father who's just caring about his career and nothing else.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm for the mantra, work hard, play hard. I think there's nothing wrong with working hard or really giving yourself to a project or a mission or even a company that you really believe in, as long as you know what you're working for.
Right.
And maybe for some people that's, you know, ripping shots, and for some other people that's, you know, showing up for their parents when they get old.
So I'm going to skip the which drug is best for forgetting about work.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, so mine is binge drinking. Awesome. So shoot.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah. No, that was a lovely answer. Productivity hacking aside, how do you truly excel at your job without losing yourself in it?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big things I learned early in my career is just the value of relationships. You know, this is something that gets repeated over and over again, and it has become a cliche. But, you know, especially in a bigger company, progress moves at the speed of trust, and trust is built through relationships, through spending time with people, through, you know, meeting people and getting to know who they are, getting to know what they're working on, getting to know how you might be able to help them. And so I think the biggest thing, especially for people early in their career, is try and show up. And one piece of career advice I really like is like, how can you make your boss's life easier without them having to ask you to do things? You know, being proactive about ways in which you can take things off your boss's plate is a good way to get ahead in your career. I think another thing to consider is sort of what are you working toward? You know, having a sense of like your end game, and some of those questions that we asked earlier about like, how do you want to be growing? What impact do you want to be having? Like, how can you have more autonomy? You know, one thing that I think a lot of early career people get stuck on is waiting for permission or waiting for someone to give them a task to do. And I think one of the best things that you can do, especially if you're trying to grow earlier in your career, is just taking the initiative and doing things and bringing something tangible to, say, a meeting with your manager and being like, hey, can you react to this, as opposed to waiting for them to send you a Slack message to tell you exactly what to do. Yeah,
I really like that. I like that advice. That's also taking the steps. That's not, you can find joy in that too.
Totally.
And yeah. Okay. Love that.
All right. So let's shift to Dear Demoted, which is a segment we do where some of the Motorheads will write us in. They've got, you know, we'll call it a paragraph sort of submission of a specific situation. We picked out a couple here. Actually, Nat, I'll let you read the first one. The first one's talking about career pivoting. So I'd love to hear your advice on pivoting careers when you're still early on. I graduated in 2023 and got a job in community organizing. I worked there for 4 months before I realized I wanted to transition to something else, ideally policy or communications. I don't think I had a career to transition from since I only worked there for a few months. But now people keep sending me organizing positions to apply to. And will even ask me to apply to the organizing position at the organization when they see my application to a different role. Should we say organizing one more time? Would that help? One thing you should know about our listeners is they're not great writers.
Yeah. Not yet, yeah.
So your position, you're safe. Don't worry about any of our audience.
It's either me or Claude.
No, it'll take me a year to finish this. So I'm sorry, one more sentence. I'm not sure what to do about this, and I would love to hear your advice. Thanks for brightening up my Tuesdays.
Okay, 2 conflicting pieces of advice. The first is like dating. The quicker you move on from the relationship that isn't working for you, the quicker you'll find the relationship that is. And so that's, you know, a vote of confidence for taking a bet on yourself. It sounds like you know exactly the type of work that you want to be doing. The second piece of advice is there a way that you can de-risk the big jump from having to be a big jump? Can you find organizing or policy or writing experience within the company that you're already working for? Can you do some moonlighting trying to do the work itself? I think a lot of times people get caught up in this like thought experiment and they're like, what job is actually the truest form of my calling? Like, do I actually want to be president of the United States, or will that allow me to have enough work-life balance? And I think like the best thing to do is actually try and get proximate to doing the work itself. Like certainly an informational interview here and there can help, but like people ask me all the time, like, how do I become a writer? How do I become a journalist? And I'm like, what have you written? And they say like, oh, I haven't written anything yet, but I have lots of ideas. And the first thing I always say is like, try writing something.
We get the same thing about content creation. Make something.
Yes.
Totally. I mean,
it.
especially in the internet age, there's so many opportunities to be able to post and share things for free. And that will actually give you better information, better data on whether you like this alternate career path than just like doing a thought experiment in your own mind about whether it might be more fulfilling.
That's great advice.
And similarly, I'll add on to that is a lot of people will run away from something when it is hard because they haven't gotten that mastery yet. They may actually be passionate about it if they can start finding success in it, but they're quickly to throw that away and be like, oh, that's actually not for me.
Totally.
So there is sort of a balance of like, did you give it enough time to say this isn't for you, or are you still sort of stuck in the mastery place before you can find the passion in it?
Yeah, there's a lot of great advice, especially for content creation. Like do something 50 times before you really have an opinion on it, or like rather than get stuck at the sort of outcome that you want, try and think about like the process-oriented goals. So like rather than being like, I'm going to launch a newsletter until I have 1,000 subscribers, be like, I'm going to write a newsletter every week for the next
that you
3
can
months
control,
and then figure it out.
Great advice.
All right, I'll read the next one. I have been working for a consulting firm for about a year now. Overall, things are iffy in terms of company culture, work-life balance, career progression, and company outlook. I have an offer to go to another company at a senior level, albeit with a slight pay cut, 10 to 12% compared to where I am now. Money is important to me, but not when stress is this high. There may be an opportunity for promotion if I stay where I am now, but no guarantees on if conditions and morale will improve. What should I look for when evaluating my decision?
I mean, I think the answer is already in the question. Like, it sounds like this person wants to move.
Yeah.
And what they want is someone to justify taking a pay cut. And I think, there's nothing wrong with taking a pay cut, especially if it's going to lead to a better life. You know, I think like that's the whole point of the book, is that like what we should be optimizing for is a good life, not necessarily a good job, and good jobs can lead to a good life, but if their current job is making them so stressed out that they're not able to enjoy the additional 10% of money that they're making, then it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Quick anecdote for myself. I took a 40% pay cut to be happy. I was traveling from north part of San Francisco all the way to Mountain View every day. I had to be in the office at 7 a.m. working for someone I didn't like. It was probably the darkest 9 months of my life. I would be driving down in the morning in the pitch black, like sort of swerving a little bit. I'm like, am I tired or do I just really hate this?
Yeah. Like, would it really be too much of a problem if I drove off the freeway?
Right. Exactly. Like, actually,
so
it's terrifying.
Obviously I didn't, I was listening to Moana and other stuff like that to get me pumped, but I left, I took a 40% pay cut. My commute became 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like the best 4 years of my life. Met some really cool people, worked at a company that I felt like I still have friends from today. Like, I basically said, my happiness is not worth this money. Like, I was so miserable. And I think a lot of times people will get to that point where you're so miserable, you have to act. And that's one of the things I struggle with. Some of my friends are like, I'm so miserable. I'm like, you're either not miserable enough to act, or like, you're just truly scared to see what the other side could look like. Totally. And I don't know how to make them or, get them to take that step. Is there anything that you think?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that being able to have choices or being able to like make a change is like a privileged place to be in,
right.
And if you can be in a place where your life where you can afford to take a 40% pay cut or a 10% pay cut and have more happiness, like, please do it. Life is short. And I imagine like if you are working in more alignment with your values and with people that you care about, you're probably going to do better work and probably, make that 40% off in much more time than you would. I think the other thing about like making the jump is I encourage people to like find the others, find other people who are in a similar position to you, who are considering making a transition or who have already made a transition like this, just to build confidence to know that you're not alone. I think people like to suffer in silence when it comes to their work life. And if like speaking to over 100 workers for this book taught me anything, it was that the like issues and the problems that we're turning over when we're trying to fall asleep at night are much more common and shared than you might imagine.
That's great.
What would you tell a college grad? What's your best piece of advice to someone who has that flexibility to try so many things and they don't have a kid on the way and are not thinking about these bigger issues? What's your advice to someone who can do anything?
Yeah, first I'd say travel. Like, do things
that
like are really harder to do when you have more on your plate and more responsibilities. The second is I'd say find something that you can be good at. It goes back to that Cal Newport advice. It's like, get good at something, and that will create opportunities for you that are adjacent to what you're already good at now. Like my first boss actually told me this. He said, if you can become like one of the best at something super, super specific, then people will assume that you know about things adjacent to that, which will force you to like learn about things adjacent to that. And that's a great way to like build career capital or build expertise within a company. So like become the best email subject line writer in the company.
Yes.
Become like
Exactly.
the person who is always like encouraging to their teammates who are having a bad day. Like find something to just be good at and
I call
get
that-
good first.
Build
and the
that
passion
brand.
will follow.
I call that become a single point of failure. Like if you left, it would hurt.
Totally.
Right. They wouldn't be like, oh yeah, he was already out the door. Like
Yeah.
become, indispensable.
Simone Stolzoff, the author of The Good Enough Job. Go listen to his TED Talk. Go buy the book. You also do corporate speaking. You speak a lot of organizations.
Do some corporate speaking,
We have a
yeah.
lot of leaders that listen to this podcast.
Are you looking for a third job as our third
podcast
podcast
host?
co-host?
Someone who
I
actually
did-
bring value?
I did take the bus here, but I think every like comedy duo,
He's so accessible.
they need a straight man. I can be the white straight man on this podcast if you need.
We need it. We need it. What are you saying about me, though? What are you saying here?
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is
Of course.
a pleasure.
Any other things you're working on, you want to plug? Where can people find you?
Yeah,
Tell them everything.
The best place is thegoodenoughjob.com. That's where you can find all the socials. I also run a book club called the Article Book Club, which is kind of fun. I just send out an article each week and a few thousand people sort of talk about it. And nice way to find a sense of identity and meaning outside of work. And I'm working on my second book, which is about uncertainty and how to get better at dealing with what we don't know. So
Ooh.
I'll see you guys in a year and a half. and
Yeah,
we can talk about
we'll
it.
definitely be bringing you back for that one. Well, thank you for your time, and it's been an honor to have you.
Thank you
I'm
guys so
sure
much for
our
having
guests.
me.
I'm sure our guests will love this.
Yes.
So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Wow. I mean, I am sweating and it's not from the barbecue chips we had at lunch.
It's definitely not that. It is probably the immense hotness of his brain.
And my deep now goal and dream of figuring out what my good enough job is.
No, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of making my career my identity. And obviously like it's hard to decouple when that is also put on a public platform like ours is so much. But I do think one of the things that I realized in hindsight that maybe wasn't that intentional, maybe it was, is having the other aspects that I really enjoy, the golf, the baseball, the working out. The
You
like,
have 1 million hobbies.
I have
Yeah.
hobbies and I really do enjoy them. And I think
And you do them all very deeply. Like, I don't
do.
know how you have time for all this.
I get very obsessed. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I don't know. It did both.
Did it
Maybe-
reaffirm for you that
it
you're doing the
reaffirm-
right thing a
Yes,
little bit?
and I also think I often lead. I have my own judgments about people when I feel like they're like ambition doesn't have to just be career oriented, And I think like I am guilty of saying, oh, if they're not career
Driven.
then I'm like, there's not ambition there, which is not true.
One of my favorite things that he said was about kind of finding that passion alongside your job. I think a lot of people ask us, when should I quit? I want to be a content creator. I want to chase this dream. And
Right.
he's sitting here telling us like, no, I wrote this book alongside my design job. I was probably overworked at the time, but I came to realize that this was my passion. This could be my full-time career through doing that. So I think my advice and what I say to companies and individuals is like, try to find that passion first at your job, at your workplace. Can you start the women's group? Can you be the person who brings baked goods in and that brings you a little sense of fulfillment? Or can you do it after work?
Right.
And then hopefully the two things will blend or one will become your full,
Right. All right. I appreciate that. Just like working to live is fair.
So
versus
fair.
like living to work.
So
like
fair.
What does it afford you to be able to do outside that you enjoy so much? Like that is actually fine. Your life is no more or less noble. The story he told about the poet, like the world-renowned poet, who's like, look, sometimes you're gonna have to work, and like whether it's for passion or because you need a paycheck, like neither is more noble.
And I think my takeaway is he mentioned like, don't turn on Netflix and like try things that aren't just relaxing,
Mind
shutting
numbing.
brain off, mind numbing. For me, it's scrolling. I'm
Yeah.
totally addicted.
Totally.
And how can I find those? We were joking about my hobbies, but how can
Yeah.
I find those things outside of work that motivate me and excite me
Right.
that maybe aren't related to scrolling on my phone?
Yeah. Or even like revenue driven.
Yeah. Everything in my life is revenue driven.
You know what? You'd be a great salesperson.
I'm still doing this pod though.
You're still doing this pod. Yeah.
Which is a cost center.
If there's any evidence against being revenue driven, it's this podcast
I
right here.
love passion projects.
Speaking of things that drive revenue, did you hear about Notion's new AI?
Wait, no, I haven't heard. Can you tell me more about it?
Notion combines your notes, docs, projects all into one space.
Oh.
And it's simple and beautifully designed. You love beautiful design. You've always said that.
I love beautiful design. I can't stop saying how much I love beautiful design.
Right. And that's one of those things. And that's why Notion's new AI, it's going to keep you sticking around.
Notion's already being used by over half of Fortune 500 companies.
Teams that use Notion send less emails, cancel more meetings, which I think we all love, save time searching for their work, and reduce spending on tools, which helps keep everyone on the same page.
So try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/demoted.
That is all lowercase letters, notion.com/demoted to try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today.
And when you use our link, you're supporting our show.
Notion.com/demoted.
Wait, before we get into promoted or demoted, is it getting bright in here?
You know, it was getting bright in here. Luckily, I have gooder sunglasses.
Oh my God, that's why you look so fly.
See, I was going to say the same thing. You look like a Gen Z baddie right now.
I do feel like a Gen Z baddie. I wear these all the time. I just posted them on the Demoted story today, actually. I am obsessed with these. If you're listening, audio only, mine are blue shades with black rims. They're called the Undercover Stunt Double. Gooder loves to get creative with those names.
And by the way, Natalie does do all of her own stunts.
I do.
In those glasses. They're stylish Sunny G's at $25 a pair, 1-year warranty, 30-day free returns.
Can I say something? Like, I just love throwing my glasses in a drawer. I don't want to put a case in it.
Same.
I'm lazy. I want it floating around my backpack. And $25, you can do that.
You can wear it while you play pickleball. You can wear it on a run. You can wear it at the beach. You know what? It gets swept away. Not a big deal.
Who cares? I'll buy another pair.
Exactly. I'm going to use the code DEMOTED for free shipping because guess what? I broke them. They're sick. I need another pair.
So once again, if you need a new pair of sunnies, Gooder is giving Demoted listeners free shipping.
You can go to Gooder, GOODR.com/demoted and use code DEMOTED for free shipping.
Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction.
Again, that is Gooder.com/demoted and use code DEMOTED for that free shipping.
Back to our tried and true promo.
Back to New York. Back to New York.
Ross is on a big Hamilton kick, guys.
I'm deep.
He cannot be stopped. We're going to do promoted or demoted. Do we like it or not like it? I'm going to give Ross the first one. Severance TV show, season 2 airs the week this episode is being released. Oh my God, I'm actually beaming ear to ear.
Hard promote.
It is my favorite show.
Hard promote. And
I think it's better than House of the Dragon.
very different.
House of Dragons?
House of Dragon. Hot
Sorry.
D as we call it. House
Hot
of the
D.
Dragon, but Hot D.
Got it.
It's better. It's more cerebral. It's more thought-provoking.
Yep.
I mean, House of Dragon is just like trying to itch that little Game of Thrones,
If a show doesn't make me like think, cry, deeply contemplate changing my whole life,
Yeah.
it's not for me.
I think we're going to promote it. Hashtag
Promote.
not an ad, but we're going to promote it.
Promote.
It's on Apple for those of you out there who are like, which streamer is it on?
Wait, you guys have to watch this. Start with season 1. I think it's one of the best shows ever made.
Just crush it. You'll crush it quick. All right. Promoted, demoted, Pilates.
Promoted.
Are you a Pilates girl?
I'm a Pilates girl. You can't tell when I turn around and this fat ass walks out the building.
I mean, the ass is no doubt very juicy.
One of my favorite videos I've ever made. I have the flattest ass, everyone. It's really, really upsetting. And I made this video that was like me after one Pilates class. Did you see this? I'm like, God, like, should I get a reduction? Like, this is crazy and offensive.
Yeah, it's not a BBL. I know what you guys are thinking.
It's not surgery. Like, do you think Kim K is going to want me to like stunt double for her? Like, what is happening? So yeah, Pilates promoted. And no, does it give you a fat ass? Not really. I do it every single day. More flexibility.
You do lots of different classes. Like you are an equal opportunity class taker.
I take every class.
Yeah.
And like one might argue that maybe I could like get a personal trainer or something. No.
Right. Or you could work towards something. If you do the same thing a lot, you can kind of like create the changes versus just like random shit.
Random shit. I never am going to become the body I want to have because I'm going to continue to do like a berries and then a Pilates and then a blah, blah, blah. Because I like being in the zeitgeist. I like being around Marina girls. I like sweating in a core power room with 50 other people in the room.
That's why I married a Marina girl.
Dripping their sweat on me. Marina girl.
Speaking of dripping my sweat on something.
Pilates promoted.
Pilates promoted. Promoted, demoted. 1 full year of podcasting. Anniversary of the pod is Jan 15. Happy anniversary, us.
Talon was in his feels for this one. Promoted. Happy anniversary to us. I think this episode today, I said this right when we wrapped, is like really the direction we want this podcast to go.
Yeah.
At least I want it to go.
We'll keep the funny in there, but we want to bring the value.
Yeah.
And I think we've needed to dial up the value just a little bit.
Once a month guest.
I still want to hear about the freak shit you guys all do. Don't worry. I want
For
to hear
sure.
that. And I want to talk about it. I want to dissect it.
And then we'll bring on a sex expert to talk about
Right.
workplace.
How does someone have yellow cum?
Yeah.
We'll
that's
call back.
That's a whole
That's
episode.
a deep cut. And if you know the yellow cum reference, you a
You are a true Motorhead. Promoted or demoted, big entrances.
Promoted.
Where's the smoke machine?
I dream of a big entrance for us.
We're
We're working on a live show.
I do love a big entrance.
Our live show is in 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks.
We're also working on a TED Talk. I'm kidding. We are not. We are not. Simone was like, you guys should do a TED Talk. We're like, oh God.
I don't think we are ready.
What could we say?
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're going to promote that. Promoted, demoted, wearing only leather.
Wearing only leather, I'm going to demote. Not for me. Little BDSM inspired.
Yeah.
Kind of scary to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of leather personally. I do have a leather jacket, which I do kind of look like a biker guy.
I'd never want to see your leather jacket. Is it brown or
I'm kind of
black?
like greasers. That's black.
Okay.
'Cause I'm a greaser.
You're a total greaser.
I'm like John Travolta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the grease theme plays when I walk around.
I don't know if I want to see. I stick to the button-up cardigan.
Watch me
Okay,
chain smoke.
you're entering into the back half here of the
I
30s.
really am.
You got to stick to the button-up cardigan.
I'm just Marine layer guy now.
You're total Marine layer.
know,
Are you a
it's-
Marine layer Marge? Can you out yourself? Are you a Marge?
In some cuts, I'm a Marge, which is a medium large. So
It's a
you
medium
fucks
large.
Out there.
I graduated from media.
We just had to return something and get a Marge.
Yeah, we had to get a Marge.
Hey, this one doesn't fit. Do you guys? What size would you like? And I have to out loud be like,
Marge.
Like, I'm a little boy, but I'm getting bigger.
I don't know, maybe Marge. I love that you're a little guy.
I'm not that little, everyone. I'm 5'11". I'm very average.
I make it seem so much worse than it is because you guys might never meet him in person. So I have to let your imagination soar. He's a totally normal sized person. But he's a little guy sometimes. Promoted or demoted, using AI to write cover letters.
I promoted. I'm here, but then you go back through it and fix it up and make it not read like it's.
If you're
shitty.
not using AI to take a first pass at everything you're doing,
What are you doing?
what you doing?
Yeah, go back in there and fix it. Just like there's nothing better than just seeing words on the paper. It's always the hardest part is getting started.
Yeah.
Throw some AI in there. I mean, the problem for us is AI isn't funny.
I think it helps with prompt.
It can inspire
like
funny.
inspire.
It's good at
It
inspiring
can inspire funny.
For sure.
It can get the thoughts going when
Yeah.
we're just drones every
Yeah.
single day doing the same
when the
thing.
Adderall's got us just deep in the doldrums.
Totally. God, they probably think we are so sorry, Motorheads. Promoted or demoted, taking baths.
Drawing a bath, if you will.
Drawing a bath is
Babe, I'm
so-
going to go draw a bath. Let me know when the tea is ready.
That was so Stewie from
Yeah. Let me know when the tea is ready.
Mother, I'm going to draw a bath.
We don't have a bathtub.
Good.
In
Who
our-
needs a bathtub?
Bathtubs kind of creep me out.
I'd never want to be seated. I'm good.
Especially the bathtubs that have like 4 legs that are like external bathtubs that aren't like built into the kind of ground, whatever wall of the apartment or house.
Sitting in a tub of my filth, demoted.
Yeah. I like to say stewing in my own juices,
Totally.
but that's how I look at hot tubs too.
Yeah.
Hot tubs,
Do hot tubs gross you out?
they do, I get in them.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I get in them.
You
But
pee?
when I look around, I don't pee, but when I look around at everybody in there, I'm just like, look at us.
Do you pee in the pool?
Slow cooking in each other's juices.
Oh God.
No, I don't, because I am convinced. I think this is a myth. You remember? Were you ever told the myth that if you pee in the pool, like there's people, they put dye in it and it just turns red and
Yes.
the pee comes out and starts looking like a pee cloud of red?
Who started that big pool?
A big pool cleaners.
Big pool cleaners
Big pool cleaning started this rumor. So I'm fully convinced, even if that isn't real, that I will be the first one that pees in the pool and it is real.
It will
and
be.
I'm like
And
swiping
it'll be
this
like-
cloud
it'll
off.
be-
Like, it's not, guys.
Well-
I'm an octopus. It's
for,
ink. I told you guys I'm an octopus.
for you, the pool won't need to have some chemical that makes it change color because it comes out brown.
It comes out brown. That is a dark cloud. What is that?
What is that? I can't see.
Who dropped their pasta in the pool?
Oh,
This is the first episode.
is
you're
anyone
finding.
still listening?
These are
Is
callbacks.
anyone still listening?
These are callbacks to very
I don't-
thick pee in the morning.
I don't
where
know
it's
if
so thick
anyone-
it looks like I am pumping pasta. And I'm trying to drink more water, everyone. I just want you to know that.
Baths are demoted.
Demoted. Baths
Yeah.
are demoted. Baths are
Peeing in
demoted.
baths, we're
Peeing
still
in
jury's
baths,
still
peeing in
out.
hot tubs, pushing pasta in the pool, all demoted.
All demoted. Every single one of them. Should we read a review? Get us out of here.
Love this pod. I am neither corporate nor Gen Z, elder millennial, but you guys keep the slang certified fresh. God, this is such a millennial.
fresh.
This is like my uncool millennial friends. I truly had no idea what Riz was until this podcast, and now I definitely know I don't got it. Cry face. You guys are a national treasure, so Nick Cage better protect you at all costs.
Thank you, non-corporate, non-Gen Z millennial baddie.
Yep.
I feel like you're my cool auntie.
I know. Yeah, exactly. This is the leather jacket wearing auntie who's just like
This auntie has a leather jacket, and I love her for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like the cool one you go
And
to.
I wouldn't know the gender of this person, but she did put a million emojis in this.
And they were all female.
And they were all female, so I had to guess. Female identifying, at least.
Female identifying baddie. Yeah.
Our guest today talked a lot about finding community outside of your workplace. And I think there's a lot of pressure to become friends with your coworkers, find that community at your job. And I think what we learned today on the podcast is maybe you don't have to do that.
And for salespeople especially, we've talked about this before. We've talked about the trauma bonding. We've talked about the ability to share best practices, like what's going on in the world, especially in this ever-changing tech landscape. And so as a salesperson myself, I was always in search of that community, both within my company and outside. And so now there's a new home for sales professionals all around the world, and it is called Salesblazer, created by Salesforce.
We're constantly asked about how to network, especially maybe when you're fully remote in your job. The Salesforce community is something that you would join outside of your 9 to 5, right? You don't have to work at Salesforce to join this community.
So consider this your official invite for you, Nat.
For me?
And you, Motorheads. Head over to sforce.co, that is .co/demoted, and join the Salesblazer community today.
That's sforce.co/demoted.
All right, let's shift on over to our shout-out section, sponsored by the aforementioned Salesblazer.
Hey, Demoted. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to my work husband, John. JK, not my work husband, but a coworker and dear friend. He's always there to listen to my work drama, offer terrible advice, and make me laugh. Your podcast is the perfect way to unwind after a long day. Keep up the great work, Jilly Bean. Okay, Jilly Bean.
I see you, Jilly Bean. May or may not have feelings for our boy John, but that's fine. Either way. All right. Shout out to Slick Ricky, my friend since high school. I introduced him to your podcast, and now he is hooked. Even though he doesn't work in a corporate hellhole like I do, he still loves your crazy work stories. More of these, please, from Tone.
Tony
McTonerstein.
Tone and Slick Ricky. They wear leather jackets.
Those are true greasers.
Hey, Nat and Ross, loving the pod. I'm a true Motorhead missionary. I've converted most of my team into devoted listeners. Shout out to the best data science crew in the Bay. From Tara and the Menlo Motorheads.
I love that, the Menlo Motorhead contingency.
You're all so creative.
We're going to have to open up little chapters around the world.
I've converted most of my team, but the rest hate it. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
the rest did not want to listen.
Some people really didn't get the prostate exam story. We kind of
lost them after that. Oh, this has been such a fun episode. If this doesn't
awesome.
make you smash that subscribe button, I don't know what will.
Yeah, the good enough subscribe button. You should smash it. You should decide what do you want from that subscribe button. Yeah. Really assess it. Look at it from all directions.
Kind of weigh what brings you that intrinsic motivation in relation to the subscribe button.
Are you extrinsically motivated to smash it or intrinsically motivated to smash it? Either way, just like money we need to survive, we also need to smash that subscribe button.
Exactly.
So it's all about how you frame it.
It really is.
So leave a comment on Spotify if the subscribing part is too much for you.
Submit your confessions, dear Demoteds. I have sunk so far into my chair, we've almost lost me.
She's almost gone.
So I guess tune in next week on
Demoted.
Demoted.